And let me share my screen and we can possibly get underway, just because I don't know how long this will take and I don't have a sense of it either. And I know from the data there's some divergence, but I'm also aware that a lot of the data that I'm seeing might be stuff that is being taken out. So we're talking, the plan for today is we're going to talk about a lot of hail and ride and the flexible stops and things like that. Oh, thanks, Hannah. I'm going to leave you to manage the people coming in.
No worries.
One of the things that I've noticed is that, well, there's a lot of work at the moment to take hail and rides out, especially in London and a couple of other places. There's also a lot of talk about putting flexes in, and creating those flex spaces, and I'm seeing quite some interesting and different patterns across different local authorities, and this is what I'm trying to tease out today. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. It's not so much that you're not meeting the schema as that there's fine differences in how you're meeting this and how you're interpreting parts of the schema and how we're doing things. And I'm just trying to tease those out because I'm seeing some differences across the data. Does that make sense to everyone as to why we're just kind of probing and asking lots of questions? Because it's not making a ton of sense and I'm just trying to get inside your heads. So today we're going to do the icebreaker. So name, pronoun, where we're from, and I'm asking the question, will MaaS save us? Will mobility as a service save us? I honestly think that's naturally an interesting question. Then the plan, we'll go through our usual housekeeping, bit of previously on. I'll catch you up on where we are with managed removal and data retention. Then we're going to concentrate most of the time on flex and hail and ride, and I'm going to be asking you lots of questions, or trying to prompt lots of discussion. So tell me if I've got something wrong, tell me if I'm making the wrong assumptions. And then I'm going to do a little bit of user research. We've got what we think is right for an MVP, and then we've got some ideas of what we need to do for the next layer, and I just kind of want to run some of that next layer past you as a group to get some ideas, and then as we move into the rolling out the private beta, there'll be lots of refining of these as each person comes on. We'll get some feedback and iterate. So these last bits are potentially going to change quite a bit over the next 4 or 5 months. It's more trying to figure out where to start from. And then we've got a feedback section. So I filled in enough. Let's do icebreakers. So we'll do name, pronoun, where we're from, and will MaaS save us? And I'm going to go up. So Tim, you're going to be the first one after me. So I'm Dr. J. I use they as a pronoun. I'm a service designer business analyst at DFT. I wave my hands and draw pictures. And will MaaS save us? I don't think so. I know MaaS seems very much like a mixture of Oyster cards and the contactless payment, the universal payments within TfL, combined with some of the things you get from like Free Now and Lime and stuff like that. I'm just not 100% sure that anyone's going to really combine those together in a good way. So Tim, you're up.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Tim Rivet. I'm he, him. I am from Artig. I'm also from the DFT with a data standards hat on. Will MaaS save us? Probably not in the UK until a few other places around the world have made it work properly. They have much more chance than we do.
I love your pessimistic optimism there. Tansy, you're the next one up.
Hi, I'm Tansy Appleby. I use she, her pronouns. I work for Transport for Wales. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle, but I don't think it's the only piece of the puzzle. I think there's a lot of other very important things that need to be resolved as well. So that's my opinion on it anyway.
Excellent. Peter Stoner, you're the next one up.
Hello, Peter Stoner from Ito World. I was a bit late joining there. We're talking about MaaS.
Yeah, so
Yes.
we're doing the icebreaker. So it's your name, your pronoun, where you're from, and will MaaS save us?
No, I don't think it'll save us, but probably limited in scope as to it'll work well in some places. Yeah.
And which pronoun do you use, Peter?
I'm pretty much I'm a he him, but yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Nicholas, you're the next one up.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Lawley. I'm from Go South Coast. He him. Will it save us? No, I personally think this whole as a service thing is a bit of a buzz. It's like a buzzword. It's a buzz phase. So I don't think it will really get anywhere personally.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Mark Hodgkiss, you're the next one up.
Yeah, Mark Hodgkiss, Scheduled Bus Service Officer, Westmoreland Furnace Council, he, him. No, I think I'm with Nicholas.
I love that.
Buzz phrase, but you know, it's yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hannah, you're the next one up.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I am one of the product owners on NaPTAN, but actually, sadly, I am leaving next week, Thursday. So I think this will be my last public meeting. And I use she, her for pronouns. And I would echo with everything else that everybody said around MaaS. So yeah, that's my stance.
Thanks, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sad to see you go. We'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. Di, you're the next one up.
I am Di Wright from Connect Tees Valley. I'm a she, her. Yeah, same as what everybody else has said. I think it's flavour of the month, but it's not realistically going to be happening with any sort of achievement.
Thank you for that. Demi, you're the next one up.
Hello. My name is Dami Adebayo. I'm he, him. I work for the routing company, a technology provider in DRT and journey planning. Even though we're kind of around MaaS technology, I do not believe it will save us. I always say that MaaS is nothing without the modes. I think what it's trying to do in terms of bringing together shared modes can save us, especially public transport, but MaaS itself, yeah, it's not going to save us.
Thank you for that. And lovely to... Is this your first meeting? I don't think I've seen you before.
Yeah, I bundled across this meeting online, so it's my first one. I will have to hop out, but yeah, lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you as well. And Andy, you're the last one up.
Hi, I'm Andy Hole. I'm a he, him. I'm from National Public Transport Information, and I agree with everyone else on MaaS. We've got a MaaS API and MaaS apps, and I think it's just a great way for local authorities and central government to spend their money at the moment.
I will also remind everybody that this was recorded, and I will be blackmailing you all with this, with what you've said about MaaS at various points. No, I won't. Of course I won't, and I wouldn't be blackmailing you in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's really interesting how MaaS is seen, because I know that DRT, or demand responsive transport, is often seen as a key part of that MaaS solution when I've been reading up and researching on it, and this is why I put it in as a question today. So very quickly, plan for today, I'll just run through some quick housekeeping just to make sure that we're all on the same board, run through the previously on and give you some updates. Then we're going to focus on the FLX and HAR stops. Demi, this will hopefully help you understand how some of the data comes through and why some of it might not align in the way that sometimes the data consumers would think, because people are seeing things and doing things slightly differently, and I just want to tease out some of that difference. Then I'm going to do a little bit of user research with you all, and then throw in some feedback. There's a YouTube channel. where you can watch everything. You watch it on high speed because it makes it a whole lot easier. You can follow us on Eventbrite, where you can get information about all of these meetings, and also if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get told about these meetings. And we send out a newsletter about once a month, usually at the end of the month or the start of the month, depending on how late I am at organising myself. So previously on NaPTAN, the ongoing saga from 2020 onwards. We now have an archive service, or what we've called managed removal. We have been working on this as a development team, and we have just today completed all of the new front end. So as of, I think it's tomorrow, I'm working with the team to be the first private beta user. We have some stops in Blackpool that we're going to be removing, and we're working through to make sure we're doing some testing to make sure all of the onboarding works before we start coming out and working with yous all to onboard. I am the first victim of this. We then previously we did some work on street versus schema. We didn't reach any consensus. That's a lot of how these meetings are continuing, of just trying to understand how the street and the schema are not 100% matching, because people are having to adapt stuff, figuring out what those adaptations are and do we need to tweak things, and how we talk about things. I will talk more about locations in a moment, but essentially everything's reported in eastings, northings. Some are in latitude, longitude. Don't hold the latitude, longitude that we provide as gospel either. Double check that it's actually being converted using the Ordnance Survey method of conversion. This is not to call out any names or point fingers at anyone. There are differences between what some people are providing and the Ordnance Survey stuff, and that's one of the things that we'll be doing some deeper dives in the future to really understand where that is coming from, where those differences are coming from, and how we can reduce them so that everyone knows exactly where a bus stop is, because even Ordnance Survey admits that their translations, they showed a translation where the eastings, northings translates in different ways around their building. We understand about coaches, and coaches are different to buses. There are some quite important differences around the routing of them, especially for distance limits. One of the things that we uncovered doing this was the coach references, and they were called the 900 coach stops. They're actually a reference to a coach reference which starts with a 900. These are no longer required, and you can withdraw this data from NaPTAN. So if you have coach references in your data, you can withdraw this. I know this is a very long, slow withdrawal, but you can take this data out. We've got to sort out lat long. It's on the roadmap. We did some work on how we create both ACTO and NaPTAN codes, and I am still trying to figure it out and trying to figure out if there's anything we can do around it to make it easier for data consumers to understand, or anyone who's producing them to understand how to do. And data retention, thank you so much for all your feedback on that. That was the last meeting. This will be deployed in the coming months. What this means is that there'll be a structure around how much data we keep and what data is available, and we'll just kind of present to you as that moves through. Currently, we're saving everything, so we will just be reducing what we save. So to get us all on the same page, we know that a bus stop, we've defined it as a group. A bus stop is where the bus stops. I know that sounds very reductive, but that's the best way of defining what a bus stop is. A fixed stop, so this is a stop with a flag or a pole, so it'll be a custom or a marked bus or coach stop, is measured as a 1 by 1 metre square centred on where the passenger needs to stand to get on the bus. Now, this is at most times this is co-located with the flag or with any street markings. There are some times where this isn't, and if it isn't, it's going to be located where somebody needs to stand. It's represented in Eastings Northings in the data, and it's translated using the Ordnance Survey, and every bus stop is represented in the data set in the world with various codes. There's an indicator on top of a bus stop. There's a code that I'm not even going to attempt to say long and short codes because they aren't. There are two codes. One is called the ATCO code and one is called the NaPTAN code. The ATCO code is a unique identifier that every single stop in the system has. The NaPTAN code is a unique identifier that only bus stops and some other stops have within the system. And those codes, those two codes are used in various ways to provide QR codes at sites, at bus stops. So people are using either of those two codes to create their QR codes. Right, that's enough of what we've done before. Let's get on to Flex and Hail and Ride. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what is the difference? Now, you can either all talk at once. I can give you a couple of minutes to throw something on the board and then we can talk it through, or I can just call out people and ask them. And nul point to anybody for pointing me to the schema. I want to understand from you what the difference is when you think about it as somebody who creates this data, and Dami as somebody who uses this data. What is the difference between a flex stop and a hail and ride stop? Unless somebody puts their hand up and starts talking, I'm going to turn. Oh, Di, you've saved everyone from having to write. You can just tell me what you think the difference is.
I think a hail and ride section of a route, which has hail and ride points on it, is a fixed section on a registered service, and the bus will always go along that stretch of road, and obviously it stops wherever safe to do so. A flexible stop is just a point. The buses that use it are not on fixed routes. They don't necessarily go there every day. It's just when somebody requires it. So it's not a fixed route, whereas a hail and ride is a fixed route.
So just playing that back, hail and rides are a section of a route that is fixed and will always happen at a scheduled time. Might only be once or twice a day, but it's at a scheduled time. Whereas a flex area may or may not have a bus go through it at any point in time.
Yeah, or potentially even ever. So if somebody has requested the bus to go there.
Is this what everyone else understands the difference to be? And I'm knowing that this group is pretty well up on this, so you're probably all just nodding away when I can't see you. Peter.
Well, I would just add in a way that I'm agreeing with what Di said, but you can look at it as being the flex it has a polygon associated with it, whereas the hail and ride is linear. It has one line going to it and another line going from it, so you can actually have a kink in it, but otherwise it's a line. Yeah.
Excellent. That's a really good one. Another really good little difference between them is, Nicholas.
I would also say that if it's flexible, it's generally pre-booked, so you've got to request it in advance, well in advance of the journey starting, unless you're catching it on the way back from a fixed point where you can request it to the driver. Whereas hail and ride, usually you can either just ask the driver to pull up in a safe place or just whack your arm out at the side of the road, and as long as it's safe to do so, the bus will stop.
Just whack your arm out. I love that. So here's a quick question. In the just whacking your arm out on the side of the road, custom bus stops in the more ruralist places, I'm very aware, is often just a spot on the side of the road. Hail and ride is also just a spot on the side of the road. What be the difference between them for a passenger or a bus catching
custom-
person? For Beryl. Andy, you started to talk as I leapt in with Beryl's
sorry.
name.
A custom stop is a single stop. So you put your hand out, the bus will always stop at the same spot if it's safe to do so. A hail and ride is a section of road with a start and an end point. And if you put your hand out at any point on that section of road, the bus will stop in the nearest safe place to you. It may not be directly next to you, but it won't always be the same spot. If you put the hand out along that section of road and the bus always stops on the same point, that is a custom and practice.
Right.
So a hail and ride is a section of road, normally a minimum of 100 meters long.
Minimum of 100 meters. Just while I've got Andy there for a second, how long can a hail and ride be? Section.
You would have, if it's going too long, you want to split them up into several sections. That's what I always advise my stop owners. So if it's more than a mile, I would then start looking at more than one section. Otherwise, journey planners don't like it. Our journey planner will work with the hail and ride, so it will pick up and drop off in any place within that hail and ride, not just in a single point. So if you make them too long, when you journey plan, the walk distance afterwards may be wrong.
Excellent. No, that's really, really helpful. Nicholas.
I think another thing to bear in mind with the flexi zones is that whereas on a hail and ride, as Andy said, there's often a custom of where the bus will stop. If you wait at the same point, then generally it becomes a custom that the bus will stop there. But if it's in a flexi zone, there's no guarantee that the same stop will be used each time, because when the journey's pre-booked, there has to be an agreement between the passenger and the booking agent to determine where the suitable pickup point is. Because somebody might say, "Oh, can you pick me up outside my house?" But that road might, even though it's a through road and the bus could theoretically travel from one end to the other, it might not be practical because it could be too narrow or full of parked cars or whatever. So it might be that the driver said, the booking agent says, "Well, we'll pick you up from the village hall or the pub or wherever, instead of a usual designated stop."
I gotcha, and we're going to run onto that with Flex because I've played with a couple of Flex systems to try to figure them out. And yeah, I know that I'm not based anywhere near a Flex. I've just been doing everything bar booking a bus. Flex might give a distance to travel to a stop. So one of the things that I assumed, I made an assumption that hail and rides only for, I call them community buses, the very, very small buses. But I've just seen that somebody's posted that some double deckers use hail and ride sections. So I was making an assumption based on life in London that hail and ride is only for sections of community buses, but I'm assuming therefore outside of London they're actually for all bus types.
Yes.
Thank you, Di. That was a very succinct answer.
It's where if it's not suitable to have a permanent bus stop located because everybody's drives are in the way or whatever, then that road could be a hail and ride section.
About roadway. Okay, so this means that you'd want to put in a permanent stop, but there's too many driveways, so you can't get the space to put it in, so you've made it a hail and ride section, and they'll become a spot by custom. Nice parkouring around the planning rules. Andy, is that a hand up or a legacy hand?
Sorry, legacy.
Brilliant. Nicholas.
We've got hail and ride areas that are actually outside of urban areas. That includes villages. So it could be that hail and ride is actually just somewhere on the side of the road wherever that may be, because there's long distances between villages, but there's nowhere practically suitable to put a bus stop. Not because there's a number of driveways, but it's just that there's no infrastructure in which to put a bus stop. It could be that there's no pavement, there's no posts, there's just literally nothing there. So it's literally a case of waiting at the side on the verge, maybe on a corner of a lane or something.
Catching buses outside of London, it's one of those things that I might end up having to do at some point in time, going to some of the more rural spaces and finding bus stops. Di, when I talked about admin parkour, it's a idea that a friend came up with on a podcast, which is about how we use. Everyone manages to look at the admin or the structure or the planning and sometimes go, oh, if I go this weird loopy way round and I do this jump across here, I can actually get around a blockage or something like that, which that sounds like what you were doing with the hail and ride, where there's no place to physically place something because of driveways. I hope that analogy kind of makes sense.
Yes, yeah. But it could also be, for example, operators trying a new service round little estate roads, and you don't want to go to the bother of plan permission and, highways amendments and putting stops in for something that potentially might not last very long. So you just consider that to be a hail and ride point and treat it that way. So you get a stage where you might have a hail and ride section, but at some point in the future, that might get proper bus stops on.
Yeah, so in future become proper. I love the way that we've now defined that a hail and ride is not a proper stop, but I know,
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I just love the way that sometimes we carefully, the way that we define things makes a small difference. I just want to bring that one to the front. There we are. Right. So it's not just the little buses, but it's probably more likely little buses, given the way people have talked about roads and lanes. Now, this is me trying to figure some of this out, because just trying to look at people's stops and routes and make sense of it. So I've got the grey is kind of the road, and I've put green hedgerows in, trying to make a little country lane. And the red around the outside is the hail and ride kind of area. Now, can you have, in this situation, could you have one hail and ride that covers both directions of travel because the road is so small? Or would you always need to have a pair of hail and rides?
Needs to be a pair.
Always needs to be a pair. That's really good to know. I know that there is something in the schema, I'm pretty sure, about defining this. I just wanted to run it past people and make sure that it's always a pair. There's nobody who would think of putting a hail and ride that covers both directions. Great. That's really good to know.
Your hail and ride has got a direction associated with the point. And if you're creating a service or a timetable, then suddenly you're going north, 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 and then suddenly you've got a southbound stop, because that's the hail and ride multi-stop. It just doesn't work.
I've gotcha. And yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it ties on to one of the next quick question I've got. Andy.
Also, a hail and ride wouldn't work on a double on both directions, because it's got a start point and an end point.
Yep.
So that start and end will, it won't be both ends. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, it's kind of one of the, I've found a couple of singletons in the data, and I'm trying to figure out whether it's a street that is it's on a route that's effectively only run in one direction, or whether it's this situation. And that was the question that I was asking, just trying to figure out what's going on. Yes, Dami, we will send you, if you go to the link on there to sign up for the mailing list, you'll get invited, and sign up on the Eventbrite, you'll get invited to all of these. And they're always recorded and thrown up on the YouTube as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No
Take care,
worries.
everyone.
Thank you for coming along. So we've covered the larger road with a pair of hail and ride sections. Now, here's an interesting question for you, because I think this is a little interpretation moment. Is the bearing the entry or the exit from the hail and ride section? Because I've shown a straight road, but if we have a road with a curve in it, that, because it's a mile long and this country doesn't have very many straight roads that are more than a couple of 100 meters long, is it the entry or the exit bearing that I should be putting in? And Andy, I'm guessing you put in it as the exit bearing.
No, we don't put a bearing on hail and ride stops.
Oh, interesting, because I've found a lot of hail and rides with bearings on them. So that is very curious. So let me just say, Andy.
I'll correct that one. We shouldn't put a bearing on a hail and ride area.
Shouldn't. Okay, no, that's fine. This is, again, just from me prodding the data and bringing up the questions, because I'm seeing differences between different local authorities and just trying to understand what those differences are all about. Di, do you have bearings? And I'm going to ask the same of Tansy as well, because Tansy's probably looking there, running through their data going, oh my God, do we have bearings everywhere?
I've just had a quick check.
Probably,
Yes,
to be
we
honest,
do.
yeah.
And you've both found bearings when there shouldn't be bearings.
Well, I don't know that there shouldn't be bearings. I think there should be bearings.
Oh, interesting. So tell me why there should be bearings, Di, and is it the entry or exit?
It's the exit. It's where the bus is going next, if you like. But yeah.
Excellent. Nicholas.
Strangely, that we have ours which are generally in the middle, and the reason being is it's not so much how it's been put into Diva or whatever of a system, it's actually how it's interpreted by the downstream systems, like the omnibus software, because that actually has to have a fixed point for us to map to. So whereas Andy and his stop owners will have, in theory, no bearing, because there is still a point associated with it because of the ATCO code, our mapping software and therefore all our other systems pick up on that point, which means that we have a bearing that in theory shouldn't actually exist because there's no way we can work around it.
Excellent. And you are catching on to a question that I'm asking a little bit further up. So hold that thought about the fixed points and the ATCO code bearings. So it's needed and shouldn't be there, is kind of summarizing what you've said, I think. Tansy, do you want to enter the great bearings on HAR debate?
I mean, I'm a little, to be honest, I don't really know enough about hail and ride stops to be able to meaningfully contribute to this debate. I know we've got some. I don't believe we created any new ones recently because in my mind they have limited use, I think. So it seems from the hierarchy that people have been talking about, there seems to be some logic there. So yeah, I know we've got some hail and ride zones. They probably have bearings. I'd need to double check that. But again, they're not super in use at the moment. So again, I will defer to the group.
Andy, another one for you.
I've just checked my data and lots of them have bearings. The problem having a bearing on a hail and ride section is the bearing should be the direction the bus is pointing when it is correctly stopped at that stop. Now, on a hail and ride section, it could be lots of different directions.
Absolutely.
It's not where it's going, it's where it's pointing when it is stopped at that stop. So I might remove all the bearings out of my hail and ride sections. I'm not even sure if most of these are valid anyway with proper start and end points. So I'll have to do lots of audits on this lot.
So take a breath on doing the audit, Andy. This is not a critique of anybody's hail and rides and how they're coded up. This is much more me just trying to understand, because I know that there's the whole thing from BODs of trying to use both hail and rides and flex. And because hail and ride and flex are very similar in how they're coded, very similar in some of the problems that they've got, that's why I combine this kind of little section together. This is never a critique of how anyone's currently doing it. It's just making sure that we're talking about the right answers. And I think understanding the need for bearings or the need for not bearings or where the bearings should be is something that we can dive a little bit into and come up with, okay, so if we're doing it this way, it works and it means that these people get what they need and we don't break all of the systems, is where I'd like to end up. But that'll probably be in a couple of months' time when we revisit some of this and come back to actually formulating opinions. At the moment, I'm asking all the questions. The next question I want to ask, and there's two of them that are kind of linked, because I've seen some of this happen and I just want to understand it. Do you call it HAR or hail and ride or H&R in the common name or short common name? And do you do anything in the ATCO code to reflect that it's a hail and ride? Is anybody doing either of these two things as a routine on their systems? Because I've found examples and I just want to understand the drivers behind this. I see Andy's running to be first in the class. So we'll go to Andy first and then I'll drag other people in.
Of my stop owners, none of them do it the same, and I don't make them do it the same. So some of my areas, Hampshire, for example, will always have HAR or FLX inside the ATCO code. Some of my other areas, Bristol, if they have any hail and ride areas, they will put hail and ride in the common name, but not in the ATCO code. So it can be, area specific in my experience.
Just making our lives yes, I will come back to this. Di.
I don't have hail and ride anywhere in the code or the name. I'm just having a quick look at the flex. Yes, I do have the flex ones.
I'll get onto the flex ones in a moment. Yeah. Don't use in the code or the name for HAR. Excellent. Tansy, I'm going to run to you as well, because between you and Andy and Di, I think I cover most of England. Well, no, you're not in England. Most of the people what give me stops is probably the best way of describing it. Tansy, how do you do it in Wales?
Again, the only ones I think we've got are historical. I don't believe they had hail and ride in the name. But again, I didn't do any homework. I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
That's okay. You don't need to. I did a lot of. The reason this was built quite late, and everyone would be like, why was this a blank until like almost midday? Because I was spending the time just double checking some of the data and making sure that I'd pulled out reasonable examples and was thinking about the right questions to ask. So don't worry about the homework. There'll be more. I'll send out the homework next time. Cool. Other quick question for you, Tansy. I know that when I went to Travelline Cymru, and hopefully I've said it right now, there's the alternate language. Is hail and ride one of the things that you would try to say in Welsh, or is it like high street, something that will always be in English, or only not have an alternate is probably the better way of saying that?
And the alternate fields would be anything that is primarily being concatenated to describe the stop. So yes, if Halen ride was in the description anywhere, it would need an alternate in Welsh. Yeah.
Okay. Would need Welsh alternate. I love the way that we have moved from translation to alternate. Because we will also be using that same language when we talk to Transport Scotland and their need to put Celtic in as well. So that's answered some questions. We're doing relatively well on time. Now, this is where I couldn't figure out what he's doing. And I'm asking the question here just about Halen rides. I'm going to ask the same question about Flex. So, Nicholas, the Flex one will be coming up. There's two locations. Well, we've got our start point and our end point, and then we have a location that is part of the stop, the basic stop. And what I want to understand is what patterns people use, what is the conceptualizations that you use for putting in where you put that other location that's not the start or the end, or do you use the start or the end as a location? So I've drawn here a Halen ride section, and I have to draw it as a square because otherwise you can't see it. We've got a start point and an end point. Where here would I put that other location? Does anyone have thoughts? Di, you're running to the front.
Mine would just go slap bang in the middle, in the direction of travel. So if your arrow's going in that direction, eastwards, it'd be in the middle on the slightly northern side of the road.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. So that's one answer. Andy, where do you slap him?
I agree with Di. Mine, because it's a stop point, the Halen ride section is always added to a stop point. So the point is the location, which should be roughly in the middle. And then you put the start point at one end and the end point at the other end. It won't be a square, though, because if you made it a square, it would make it into, or a rectangle, that would make it into a zone. That would make it into a flexible zone. The start and end points are center line.
Yes.
Start point and end point on the center line data.
My ability to draw a nice line, I tried to draw it as a line, and you couldn't see it against what I was drawing as the road, which is why I had to represent it as a square, even though it's not a square. Just pretend that's a very, very thick line that's outlined in red. Mark and Tansy, I'm going to ask either of you if you have thoughts as to where you put it. And Tansy, I know yours is historical, and I didn't suggest doing the homework, so where would you think of putting it is probably a better way of saying, if you had to code one up, where would you think that this middle piece, that this location should be? Mark?
We took all our Halen rides out many years ago, but I think when we did have them, because basically they meant nothing, but I think we were putting it was the midpoint. But obviously that's not accurate because it could be anywhere on that stretch. But we don't really have that. I mean, we have a lot of unmarked custom and practice stops, but we don't have many things which you could really call Halen ride. It's more it stops at the village pub rather than it stops anywhere in the village.
I gotcha. But it's not quite the spot. Cool. Mark, when we get to manage removal, we'll help you clean up a lot of the dead Halen rides if they're still around, if you haven't converted them and made them into custom stops. Di, tell me more.
Yeah, well, just to say that in many ways, it's to enable the operator, if they're using EBSRs, to be able to plot round a section of the route that doesn't have physical bus stops.
Mm. Yeah, so they can plot around no physical bus stops. This is where it's interesting to see how then journey planners and journey planning apps then take what is there for the operators and use it as this is where the stop is, rather than you can request to stop anywhere between these points. And I'm wondering if there's some minor or some pieces of confusion on that, and there's more to come up about that when we hit the flex zones. Tansy, any thoughts as to where you would stick your random extra, our extra location?
Yeah, well, I'm having a look at some examples, and I think, to be honest, we've been using them as unmarked stop points, so having them as hail and ride seems almost redundant. So personally, I don't think we have any real hail and ride stops. So I can't really. I mean, logic would debate to say I'd put it in the middle, but to be honest, I can't think of any examples where we would need a hail and ride over an unmarked stop.
That's really great. So I'm getting a sense that hail and ride's kind of like a bit temporary. It's a bit and it's usually converted into either a custom stop or a physically present stop, a stop with a post, at some point in time during its lifetime. Does that sound about right? So like hail and ride's kind of not expected to last for 20 years? Or am I reading this slightly differently? Peter and then Di. Peter first.
Well, I can certainly remember, actually, Mark, in your territory, walking the streets of Maryport, where they had some hail and ride sections going around the housing estates, and the operator decided that they really would like to sort of mark them up with some marked stops, because it's a little bit difficult if the drivers got people waiting at very close by each other. Eventually you need to get a bit of practice into it and say, well, please wait here, and then people get a clearer to sign. So that was actually Cumbria, and I do remember conversion of some hail and ride, genuine hail and ride around estates that became fixed stops as a result, at the request of the operator.
Converted around estates. That sounds a brilliant story, and thank you for that. That's helped me understand that lifetime. Right. It's going to go Di, Andy, and then Mark. Di first.
Yeah, it's just to say the intention might be for these to be the precursors of actual physical bus stops. Saying that, I do have hail and ride points that have existed for the last 20 years, so take that as you may.
So I was going to, because Di, you were there with Sue, weren't you? And Sue was talking about some of the stuff that her little community bus or smaller bus routes were doing, which sounded almost like hail and ride / custom stops all across the place. And I was unsure as to which way round they were coded.
Yeah, well, I think Sue's doing her own thing that I really didn't want to be learning about.
Yes. Yeah, we'll touch that one at another point. Andy.
I was going to say, we had a lot. They seem to be fashionable. It's like DRT services. DRT services come and go because the local authority think they'll be cheaper than standard buses, and then they realise they're not, and they'll get rid of all the DRT, and they'll go back to standard buses. And hail and ride is very similar. They think they'll save money and it will work, and it just never does. So they come and go, in my opinion.
Cool, come and go. Excellent. And Mark.
Yeah, I did just backing up really what Peter and Andy just said. I mean, I think a lot of it came about probably in the sort of 1980s when we had deregulation and lots of minibuses, and buses were stopping anywhere, and it was really fashionable. And then I think we found the problem was that they were stopping so regularly, the bus was just getting later and later because everyone wanted to stop every 100 yards outside their house. And therefore, marked bus stops came in. And now, where we've got hail and ride, it is, I think, as Tansy said, it's more where you've got, the custom practice stops that it's not really hail and ride at all. It's just that it's stopping there because someone's waiting there.
More cuss than by practice. Nicholas.
The irony is that we've actually got a service that's literally about to change from a flexi service to a fixed route with hail and ride on it. And part of the reasoning for doing that was because of the time frame in being able to get any fixed point infrastructure in place in particular villages and housing estates. Although it was the council that insisted on the hail and ride, and we've gone with it as an accepted point in the meantime. But we were actually pushing as an operator to have the fixed stops put in, because it meant that we actually had flags and timetable cases that would actually allow us to better promote the service. Part of the problem with hail and ride is because there's no bus stop flags, you've got nothing to actually tell potential customers what bus runs down there, where it goes, and what times, unless they physically go and try and find it on the internet or something.
I want to know when and where bus will be /go. Di.
Yeah, just further to what Nicholas was saying there, we had a new bus service put in, electronic bus service put in by Stagecoach, I think it was. It was just pre-lockdown, so it didn't actually survive at all. But they put the terminal point as being on the hail and ride route, and I had to point out that no, it wasn't a terminal point, it was a timing point on the hail and ride route, and I had to point out that they'd used the hail and ride stop as their timing point, and that really didn't work.
Oh, yes. For operators, yes. There's an entire thing about timing points that we're going to get into. This is known as, once we start being able to remove stops, there will be the great data cleanse. That will start the long, slow trawl through the data and figuring out some of the data that we're putting in that don't need to be there, or might not need to be there, or might be redundant there. Right. Cool. We're doing good on time. Does anyone want to take like a 2-minute stretch break, etc., and then we'll hit the flex stops? Because I get a sense that the flex stops is going to be an even more interesting conversation in how it's put in and some of the weirdnesses that I have found. Does anyone want a 2-minute break, or is everyone okay to continue?
Fine to go with me.
Excellent. We'll just truck on. Give me a moment. Right. So, again, from what I've seen, and this is just based on me trawling through the internet on all the different flex services, we believe that they're only for small buses. And in fact, this bus would be quite big compared to some of the flex buses. I've drawn a little community bus, and some of them seem to be 8 to 10 seat minibuses at max. Is this a correct assumption that flex is for the small buses, or do you have some big double deckers doing flex?
The biggest we have as an operator is about 20 odd seats, but even there, because the service they were being used on is either becoming a fixed route, or in another case it's become part of one of the new digital DRT schemes that the council provided their own minibuses with because the funding they received, and they were down seated to about 16 seats. So at the moment, going forward, that would be about the biggest you'd be looking at.
So here's a question, Nicholas, that maybe I hadn't understood. I have made the assumption that flex and DRT are two words for the same thing. Are they not?
We see it as DRT being the service and the flex being the zone that it runs in. So effectively, they run together. You could potentially say they're two different things for two different terms of the same thing. It's just the way we have it is that we've got DRT services that are fully flexible, but also in certain cases they're semi-flexible. So there are fixed elements within that service, but it's branded overall as a DRT service.
Gotcha. That's really helpful to kind of pull it out in my head and allow me to explain it to people. Mark.
So where there may be a possibility is where we've got routes which return as flexible. They'll go out as a fixed route, but on the way back, if there's no one for that village, they'll bypass it and stay on the main road to get people home quicker.
Fixed route goes flex if not need to drop off in the village.
Yeah. So in that case, it's not. You don't have to ring up and book it because you're doing it on the bus.
Yeah.
And on the outward journey, it goes everywhere, but on the way back, it just goes to wherever is required for the passengers on the bus.
Okay, only for those on the bus. What if somebody's waiting in a village for the bus, or would that be booked so the driver would know that they needed to drop into the village?
It would only go there if you'd had to.
Yeah.
I think the operator who does it was one of our community groups says that if you wanted to pick, because mostly it's taking people into town and then bringing them back again. But if you want to travel village to village on the way back, I think you just tell the driver or tell the operator in advance, I want to be picked up on the 2:00 bus, but otherwise he wouldn't go there.
Right, into town and back again. Routes. Okay. I would love to come and have a longer chat on this at some point in time, because I think just trying to understand some of the nuance there, but I totally get it, and thank you. Andy.
On that one that was just being mentioned there, the stops on the way back would be set down only on request. Otherwise, like you say, it wouldn't journey plan. So it would have to be set down only. I wouldn't class that as a flexible route or a DRT route. It's just set down only on request. The other one going back on Hail and Ride can be served by standard routes or DRT. Flexible zones are only ever DRT services.
Okay,
Pre-booked
so
DRTs, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm still back on the first half of that sentence. So Hail and Ride by normal, I'll just call them normal. I hate using the word normal, but we'll just use it here. By normal route or DRT. Flex is DRT only.
Yeah.
Cool, that summarised it. Nicholas, is that a legacy hand, or do you have a...
No, it was a new point. It was also Andy kind of partially mentioned what I was saying with regards to the set down only. You tend to find that a lot of these are sort of market day services where they are registered as a fixed line route, and the bus will just drop off after a certain point on request, purely for those that are already on the bus. So there would be no scope for those passengers that are intending to be able to catch it, because it would not be registered, and that's the key thing. It would be registered as set down only.
Okay.
Likewise with the DRT and as well, going back to the point I was making about semi-flexible, is you can have a DRT bus which is completely flexible, and it is literally the bus will just go wherever people pick up, and that could be anywhere within the zone. But you could also have termini with a flexible zone in the middle, so a bus may leave one end or the other end. For example, taking towns that we have like Devizes in Pewsey and Wiltshire, where the bus will leave at fixed times and have an arbitrary arrival time, but within that it will be completely flexible. And that's on top of also having the semi-flexible, where you may have fixed points along the route, but these are like odd stops, maybe midway or something like that. So there's a lot of different things and a lot of different structures, and strangely we have that in one service where it does different things. Each journey does something different.
Yeah, and one of the, and I understand that we're putting these stops in and we're trying to represent them in a way that allows, and I'll hark back to Beryl travelling to see Beverly. Beryl wants to see Beverly, and they live in the outskirts of Birmingham at the moment. I don't know if Birmingham has, but there's a demand responsive transport system. There's these weird, I'll call them slightly edge casey or slightly different to your, there's 4 buses an hour or 2 buses an hour bus services that need to be taken into account by journey planners, that need to be taken into account by people trying to travel there. And if you're not a local, if you're traveling there for the first time, if you're trying to understand what services are available, this is so complicated to explain. I am starting to get lost, and I'm drawing pictures inside my head of Beryl traveling with her onions from the marketplace to the village because she bought onions. I don't know why she bought onions, but that's the images that I've got inside my head of just how does she know which bus to hop on? How does she know how long the journey would take? How does she know what to say to the bus driver? All of those things. So just trying to put that together. So I'm getting a sense that DRT is wildly complicated to understand, wildly different wherever it's put in, and there's so many varieties. Calling them all the one thing is quite interesting. I'm going to ask a couple of questions about the flex areas just to move us along a little bit. This is a village or an area, and the grey things are roads, and the red thing or main roads, and the red thing is your complex polygon. Does this match people's thinking of what a flex zone looks like?
Yes.
Excellent. Andy, top of the class. Di? I see Tansy's run away, which I got. I'm sure she'll be back. Di?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, that was one of the easiest ones. Mark, I'm sure this makes sense, even with your kind of system, slightly weirder or slightly more esoteric systems. This is also just what you consider to be a flex. Now, as far as I'm aware, a flex has no bearing. I can't find anyone who's tried to put a bearing in on a flex. Is that also just a quick yes from Di and Andy?
No, I've got bearings. Only because
Di, you slay me. You slay me so much.
Only because I think I can't create bus stops in my system without a bearing being attached to it. So they've just got a nominal north bearing, all of them.
Which system are you on, Di? Just remind me, is it
Novus.
Omni? Novus. Thank you. Andy, do you have bearings?
I've just checked. I've got 44 with a north bearing and 145 with no bearing. So 44. The only ones they put in is north, which, yeah.
And 145 with none. Wow. Okay. So
going back to the polygon.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Jason. Going back to the polygon, it can be as simple as a triangle. but it is
Yes.
always an area, you know.
Yeah.
But would be the simplest form, but to very complex shapes. So it is it can be a very complex polygon.
Thank you. I'll just put. So you couldn't do a circle.
But you could. Yeah.
Would you have to do? So here's a quick question.
You'd have to build every spot on the curve. Yeah.
Yeah. So a circle is not a simple. So a circle is not a circle is not just a radius, is not just a line.
No.
It's a lot of it's a lot of little polygons.
A lot of little points. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's good to know, because I was like, could you not just say it's within the circle? Flex has no bearings. That's wrong. We found them out. Now, this is actually from a real example. So I will zoom in. I have a flex zone which has fixed points within it. Is this normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Completely normal.
Yes.
How?
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to swear. How does this work?
The DRT service will serve the flexible zone, and standard bus services may serve the stops, the standard stops. Now, it may only happen that the standard stops are only used once a week or twice a week, and the flexible zone is there to pick up in between times.
Do the others. Okay. That's interesting. Di.
Yeah, completely agree with that, except in our situation, the bus stops aren't served. The services have all been withdrawn, which is why the flexible service has been put in. But I leave the bus stops live rather than making them historic.
And left live. Okay. I'm going to get you all to go and sign up to something and have a look through it, and then tell me, because I can't figure out how it works. Nicholas.
This comes back to the semi-flex I was mentioning earlier. So you've got a flex zone where most journeys would be pre-booked, but there may be a fixed point in the middle of that, or certain journeys would serve those fixed points, particularly at school times. Because the flexible service may have a specific school flow which is included in it, or because it's the largest village within the flex zone, it'll always go to that point, even though it's within the flex zone, but it'll always have that fixed time.
Yep. Tansy's coming back. Just say yes. Hey, Tansy, we are now deep in. I'll ask you, because I don't know. Does Wales have flex at the moment?
No, not that I'm aware of. No, but again, all the DRT stuff, it's not my team that deals with it, so I'm learning. Sorry, I had to drop out for an emergency.
No problems. What I've drawn up here is something that actually I found, and I'm thinking about saying what it is, but I might pause the recording when I say exactly where it is, because I found out I can sign up, not put a credit card in, and play around with this DRT, because it's got a lot of fixed stops within the flexible zone, and I am so trying to figure out how it works. And Buckinghamshire may very well end up with me just popping in to talk to them about it. Anyway, so we've got those. So what I then tried to do is I then went and tried to book a seat and figure out where the nearest pickup place is within a flex. And what to me looked like a picture of where a bus was turned out to be where the bus stop was. So directed me to go and have a look at a bus, to walk to the bus stop to pick something up. But when you're using an app, and maybe this is something that none of us really know about yet, how does the user know where the nearest pickup place is, or is it just pointed on the app?
So it depends on the app. So some providers will only pick up from street corners. Some will pick you up from wherever you say you want to be, either where you are when you book it or where you've told it you want to be picked up from. It's entirely dependent on the scheme, and some schemes will only pick up from marked bus stops as well.
Ah, that's interesting.
Or from the church, or the war memorial, or identifiable places. So it's a wild west out there in terms of where things will pick you up from.
Yes, I am. Di, I saw you about to come in there.
I mean, I don't know our particular flexible service, but they pick up from bus stops generally. But the one comment I did have to make, we have a community transport service that had a regular pickup point which all the old dears used, and we had complaints from the person whose house they were queuing up outside. So it had to be a specific thing that was moved to a different location.
Outside a house. That was actually going to be one of my questions, because it's the planning regulations problem of, I want a bus stop, I want to live close to a bus stop, I do not want to live outside of a bus stop. Moved point. Okay, yeah, so that's a because that was going to be one of my questions of, how do you deal with the fact that there will become custom pick up points within a flexible zone, because that is the place where one or two people always seem to meet to be picked up, and how do you cope with the planning around that? But I think Di's just answered that one, which is kind of one of my little ones. Before there's anything else, this is the High Wycombe, and I might bleep that out, flexible app thing which I've been playing with, which actually not entirely closely maps this, but does closely map, in that there's a lot of fixed stops as well as flexible stops, and just trying to figure out how some of it works within that space. But also I might go and have a chat. So if anyone does have flexible bus services that use an app that you don't need to be located within a village for, because some of them are really strict on their locations, please send them through to me, because I'm just trying to understand how they're using the NaPTAN data, so that I can see where some of the problems with the data might be, if that makes sense. Just seeing how people are using it and how they're placing things. Obviously, whatever this app is, it seems to be pretty accurate on where it's dropping its bus stops. They're not floating off into fields or something, so they might be using eastings, northings, or they might have a really good translator. I'm not 100% sure, but they seem to actually have managed to get their bus stops mapped to their roads, which is, as we all know, is not the easiest.
So, Dr. J, the reason that things look neater on the apps is pretty much none of them are using NaPTAN data. They live in their own little ecosystem that's a closed loop.
Yes, which is interesting, because they're showing a lot of bus stops, and that's, I wanted to make sure that, because they're showing stops that are fixed stops within their flexible zone. So I will go and talk to them.
So at least one of those bus stops in their app have been surveyed by their own team they've driven around and done the mapping themselves, and there is no update mechanism. If a stop changes in NaPTAN and things like that, they have to go out and resurvey.
I thank you for that, and thank you for I won't say thank you for challenging the assumption that I had made, because I will now go and have a chat to those app makers and figure it out as well. So just very quickly, I'm going to ask you the two naming questions again. Do you call it Flex in the common name or the short common name? And do you do anything to the ATCO code to reflect it's a Flex or a DRT? Tansy, it doesn't count for you because you've not got any. Mark, Andy, and Di, I think you're the people to answer this question for me.
I call it Flex in the common name, but there's nothing in the ATCO code.
Excellent. Andy.
Some of my areas, they all seem to have flexible or flex in the common name. Some of them put FLX in the ATCO code as well, but some areas don't.
Name most and some in ATCO code. Mark, how do you do it?
We don't.
Oh, good.
We certainly don't do anything with there's nothing we can do with the ATCO code, because our ATCO code's all numbers. But I've just had a look, and there's nothing on any of the stops which has got flexible or hail and ride or anything else. I'm saying we took all the hail and rides out anyway, and I don't think we've got any flexible stops there either. It's all fixed stops with us at the moment. But we're gonna have to change. We're gonna have room mobility started soon. We're gonna have to change that.
Okay, excellent. So Lincolnshire are using demand responsive area. That's a big thing for the common name for all their flex stops. Okay, cool. Because that was one of the things I noticed, that people were trying to make some very long common names. And it's just like, because I know that we don't tend to use some words we don't tend to indicate in the common name what type of stop it is, and things like that. And yet flex and DRT area seems to change that ever so slightly. I'll get to that when I get to mapping. And again, location, location, location. So we have, and I'll just zoom in again. We have our top location, and then we have our polygon. So this central location, where would you place it in this polygon to, if you need to label your polygon with any kind of space or something like that?
Normally, again, the first location is the center point, is the point that you put the stop, because a flexible zone is built on a standard stop. So you build the standard stop first, and then you make the flexible zone around it. In my training, I try and get them to put the stop in the center of MaaS. So the center point of a village, if it's a village zone, or just center of MaaS if it's a larger zone. And then they build the polygon around it. Okay,
excellent. Di, do you do it kind of the same?
Exactly the same.
Di does it the same. Excellent. There's Andy. Mark, any thoughts? Do you do it the same? This could be a point of agreement, and I will fall off my chair.
Oh, we would do it the same. We don't do it, but we would do it if we were going to do it. We go for the centre point.
Mark would do it the same. Is this because you've not got any flex at the moment?
We don't. We have some flex, but we haven't actually put it into the system as flexible routes.
Right. Yep, I've gotcha. Cool.
We just pretend it's not there.
We seem to be in some sort of vague agreement, which is a shocker, and a new development within the NaPTAN community, I have to say. Very quickly before I move on, because I want to give us a few minutes to go through some user research. What did I forget to ask about Flex, or have I asked all the right questions?
Who uses it and how do they use it in apps and journey planners?
And apps and journey planners. I know there's not that many who use it because we only have 1,300 Flex stops in NaPTAN currently. So I think that is the next one is to talk a lot more to the consumers of this data and get them to talk to me some more. And I think I will go doing some specific hunting there. So if you do have, if you can think of any that are in your area, please let me know. I'm doing lots of Googling and trying to figure it out. But if you've got specific people you like, talk to these people. I know that they're running something in my area or they're about to run something in my area that is going to be so helpful. And I'll get in touch with Dami as well because I think that would be really good. Trapeze about how...
Trapeze about how to integrate into a journey planner.
Yeah.
Because they're giving quite a lot of thought to that in light of the flexible services spec for BODs.
Yep. Which is why this was here, because if people are building flexible services and BODs, they need these stops, and we just wanted to make sure that we were doing the things similarly or making the same assumptions of each other. Andy?
Our journey planner uses flexible zones and hail and ride and whatever. So the journey planner uses it, the API that's used by a lot of our local authorities for their journey planners. They, as far as I'm aware, use flexible zones if they have DRT. WECA, the Bristol area, have just gone through a lot, but they've got an outside supplier that does their DRT services. So they've taken them out of our system, which was a bit of a weird one. But yeah, a lot of the old area, Hampshire used to have a few DRT services that use flexible zones, but like I say, they go in and out of fashion. So most of those were turned off again. But they journey plan fine in the apps and in the journey planner on the website beforehand. So yeah.
Excellent. Have since gone. Yeah. I will get in touch with the Bristol WECA one. You'll have to tell me how to spell WECA because I'm thinking WEKA, which is like a swamp bird, but it's not. And I realise
CA, WECA.
Oh, excellent. WECA. I will go.
West of England Combined Authority, I think they are.
Ah, excellent. West of England Combined Authority. I would not have got that one. Nicholas.
The example, that primary example that I've been using, it was from Wiltshire, and it's Wiltshire that just launched the new system as well. When I was saying it's migrated from one to a new contract, it's called Wiltshire Connect, and they're the ones that are running this hybrid, because the way they've got it now is as well is they have the semi-flexible bus, which runs to a semi-flexible timetable, and then they also have the same area covered by a fully flexible bus. So they've got the two running hand in hand, and they use a third-party app provider who runs all the back office systems that tells our drivers where to go, that sort of thing. And it also has that capability that if a passenger is requesting a bus close to the point that the fixed bus is due to run, they will actually put the passenger on the fixed bus rather than on the flexible bus to free up spaces for people who live further away. So it's quite clever in that regard as well.
That's really fascinating, and I think I will definitely go and chat with Wiltshire Connect. And Di, I see you've got a DRT service, which I will give them a yell as well and just try and understand it. I'm running the second one in this week, so those will be in the future, probably in the next couple of months. I will get in contact with them. There's a few other bits that we need to sort out, but this has been brilliant. Right, got just over half an hour. Let's take a deep breath, and we're going to move on to doing a little bit of user research. So I have here some designs, and some of you will have seen them and some of you won't. So this is a journey, and we're all going to go on a quick journey together. So we're going on this journey. We have a stop that has been taken out of service for some reason. That road is now closed, and the stop is no longer physically serviceable. So we want to take it out of service and remove it from the data set. So that's the mindset that we're all on. So what we're going to do is we come to the NaPTAN homepage, and we click on Remove a NaPTAN Stop, which takes us to a page which talks about removing a NaPTAN stop. So I'm going to give you all a second to have a look at this page and tell me, just put up a 1 to 5 as a sticky or something. Does this page make sense, and do you feel that it tells you what you need to do? This is where Hannah discovers I might be good at planning user research. I'm really bad at running it. Di?
Yeah, when we did the testing of this, the initial thought was this is just removing stops from the NaPTAN dataset. It's not removing it from my software, so that every time that I upload a new update, won't it just get uploaded again?
That is what we've got here, because we remove it from our data set, and you will then remove it from your data set.
Yeah, but I can't.
And this is part of the slow private beta, is finding all the people who can't and helping you figure out with your software provider how to make that happen, because we will, if you remove a stop, we will no longer accept an upload with that stop in. And this is why we are doing a very, very slow rollout and thinking about this and thinking of how to message this. So you've brought up the exact point. So thank you so much for that.
Because, I mean, our suggestion during the testing was that exporting downstream from the NaPTAN website just didn't export anything that was set as historic, so that people couldn't actually upload something that wasn't live.
That's very much the principle that we're running to. So just hold on to that thought. We're trying to do this principle. We're currently going to start a private beta of it. If it turns out that this is only going to work for some people and not for enough people, there are things that we can do. We will sit down and replan it. But we've got a plan, and that was part of the service that we rolled out. The service design was talking about it needs to be removed from your data set as well as ours. I want to talk to people who are going to have that problem and really understand what systems and how we can make this work so that it works for everybody. So we've got a really simple standard for everybody, because not everybody's on the same software. So we're having to do a lot of figuring out what's happening at each local authority, and that's why we've had an agreement that this will be the longest, slowest private beta in the history of private betas. This will not be like the migration where we had to get you off one service onto another. This is going to be a handhold for every single one of you, trying to understand your situation, how we've solved it in other places, how we solve it best for you, how it's going to work, and how we can make this work for you. Does that make sense, Di?
Yeah.
Sweet. So assuming that you can do some magic removal from your system or not, this is if you can just put a sticky on there and tell me whether or not this page reads and makes some sense, that would be brilliant. Andy.
Are you expecting us to do them individually, one stop at a time? Because, you know, the migration from BTP, the Bournemouth Christchurch pool, I'll need to remove a couple of 100 stops.
Exactly.
You know, we can already set things to deleted.
We are not
physically removing them. We're going to do them thousands or hundreds at a time.
So, Andy, we are building in a multi-removal one-off or able to be done in bulk for catching everybody up on the 20 or 20 plus years, because I found a whole pile of we have Paris Nord in one of our in the 940 data set, if nobody noticed. So there's quite a lot of historical stuff to remove from the data set, so we're planning a bulk migration that we will do as part of this live rollout. When your data set's all cleaned up and you're all up to date, I don't believe from chatting to people that you're going to be doing more than 2 or 3 at a time. The maximum it might be 10 if you're closing a big road or you've taken apart a big thing, but we want this to be a really thought through final piece of getting rid of something from a data set, and permanently listing it as permanently removed is quite a big step. So we're trying to make this part just one at a time. Catching up on your backlog, you and me, we will do that, because I know we've got to sort out Christchurch and BTP.
Yep. Okay. All right. Understood. Fair enough.
Sweet. Cheers. Yes, trust me, you're not Transport for Manchester who have come to me, and I don't know how big it is, but it's got several zeros on the end of it for the number of stops, and I'm like, we've got plans of how to do the big ones. It's the everyday, the once every 6 months removing a stop that has to be removed for some reason is the new normal that we want to move you all to. So we've got the description of what you can do. So we're going to check if it can be safely removed. So we're going to check if it's used in any live services that you might not be aware of. There might be some random bus company that is for some reason using bods to send through using a bus stop that you were not aware that they were even thinking of using. You'll be able to review all the stop information to make sure you've got the right one, and then you'll do an actual confirmation that you want to get rid of the stop. And then when you've done that, through some mystical technological process, you'll remove the stop from your local data, and then you will republish your NaPTAN file. And at that point, after that last step, the stop will be permanently removed from the system, and it'll be marked as removal. And one of the things that we're looking at is providing a feed of those removed stops to bods and to TNDS, so that they can, and other providers if they need it, so they can turn around and say, hey, HARSEC, you're trying to put in a route that is using a stop that has been removed. So we're trying to close that circuit so that bus operators can't keep trying to use dead stops that have been physically removed for whatever reason. So we then go to the next page and we put in the ATCO code and click on check stop. So we've told it which stop we want to check, and it's going to go off and it's going to run 3 checks for us. First off, it's going to bring back quite a bit of information about the stop. So it's going to tell us the ATCO code, confirm that with us so that we can confirm on our writing. It's going to give us the common name, the locality, and the bearing. And with that information, we can confirm that we've got the right stop. We haven't put a typo in, we've copied and pasted, or we've typed in exactly the right thing. And then we do 3 checks. The 3 checks the colouring and a few things is a long and involved conversation that may change, and the layout may possibly change as we go forward. We're going to check if the stop is in the NaPTAN data set. So does it currently exist in NaPTAN? Because there might be some stops that when you get to this point don't actually exist anymore. They've already been marked as removed, or they never existed in the first place. And one of the things that our threat modeling found is you could put a whole pile of stops on the remove list and then prevent people from uploading to those numbers. And we thought, that's not a great thing. So we're going to do it. We're going to make sure you can only remove stops that actually exist. You can't just suddenly block an entire ATCO code. We're going to then check if the stop is in the list of stops that have been removed. Di, I'll finish this mouthful and then I'll get to you. And then the third thing that we do is we go off and we currently check TNDS. We're going to in the future check both TNDS and BODs that it's not in any published routes. So we do kind of a 3-part systematic check of all of the data sets to confirm that this is a stop that exists, that it's not already been marked as removed, and it's not in any published routes. So I'll finish that thought and run to Di.
Just to say, is the whole start of this progress, is this password accessible? Because you don't want anybody just logging in and trying to remove stuff.
This will be so super locked down. We're going to give it to you one by one, but also we want to double check if you're working with a team. It may only be 1 or 2 members of Tansy's not here. I was going to say, just let Tansy know we're setting it up so that it's only 1 or 2 members of your team might have this permissions. So we want to give you that control as to exactly who gets permissions to see this process.
Okay, thank you.
So it's super, super, super locked down. Don't worry. Again, another thing that we've been running through. Then at this point, we will make you tick a box to say that you understand that you're going to remove the stop and nobody can upload any NaPTAN files that contains this code. With that, and this process is not reversible, and then confirm removal. With that question that's just been posted up, we are not, because the purpose of that, as far as we understand, with all of the user research that we did, that was to check it was not in published routes. So what we are doing is we're doing an explicit check of all the published routes for the stop, rather than having it sit in a status for a length of time, because we have found stops that have sat in that status for more than that length of time that have not been removed because systems, and this we thought was a better, more explicit way of achieving the result that everybody wanted. Andy, you're going to tell me I got that completely wrong.
Well, this way, the way you're discussing there, you'll have an active stop. So, and that stop will be active in lots of people's software that we can then remove from the NaPTAN system, but it's still going to be in their system. It's still going to, if I remove a stop, Nicholas might not update his NaPTAN stops for months or for weeks. He could then track to a stop that is active because it's still active in his system, and it's been removed permanently from ours. You know, in my opinion, it should be set as a deleted stop way before it is finally removed.
So I totally understand, and we are solving that in a slightly different way. So if Nicholas used in that scenario, if Nicholas then tried to publish to BODs or TNDS, when BODs or TNDS use our list of removed stops, they would flag to Nicholas, you're trying to publish an active route to remove stop, and here is the problem stop that you need to go and find and sort out on your system. So we're preventing that happening.
But that's after the fact that operator has already done it. It could be a registration. You know, the stop is going to be active in the DBSA system, and then you're going to remove it. Someone could register a service to a stop that now, in the meantime, we've made deleted or permanently removed, that hasn't even been deleted first. You know, I think you're missing a step.
I think we're quite.
Sorry, Nicholas.
Sorry,
I'll let you go.
Sorry. I think we're quite fortunate that with the process that we have is that if I was to plot a route that included a stop that doesn't exist, first of all, when I submit that file to one of the data coordinators, when they try to import it, if that stop's MaaS is deleted in the Diva software, then it would reject this. It would reject the whole file, and therefore the coordinator will come back to me and say, "This stop you've got a stop here that actually exists." Secondly, because of how BODS works, if a stop is not in the NaPTAN database that is contained within BODS, the whole file, the whole upload will actually be rejected. So again, we would get an error report from BODS to say this stop doesn't exist. Unfortunately, it does mean that we've got to go quite a way down the process until we find out, and then have to go back and start it again. But there are fail safes in place at least.
And Nicholas, what we want to do is ensure that Diva could pick up that list of removed stops so that you can catch it right at the start. So if you tried to, at that data coordinator stage, or even at the stage where there's a feed of removed stops, we want this as an API. We want this as something that Diva or somebody can ingest on a continuous basis. So they can ingest it and go, oh, these stops no longer exist. That's fine. We'll just take them out of the system. We'll just mark them as not, grey them out, or don't even show them, whatever. And that is a way of ensuring that we've got cleaner data across the entirety of the system. That's what this is all about, is cleaning up the data. Because one of the things we've found with this deleted for a set period of time, and I understand why it was important, it hasn't worked since 2013 to 2015. I can't figure out the exact date when it stopped working. And there are a lot of stops that are just in some variable states that we just need to get rid of. And this is a way of doing it that's programmatic, that means that we can do feeds to people so they can easily see the stops that are going. Also, I don't believe, unless there is a major instant change, it is highly unlikely that you will go from an active stop to a physically removed stop in a short period of time. Having gone through some of this with people, that going from a stop that exists on the street to a stop that no longer exists on the street is not an overnight process. So, and cleaning up the data is usually happening very much after the stop has been physically removed. Does that help assuage your worries, Andy? And I will be sitting with you one-to-one to go through this with your systems, and we'll go through your ACTO codes one by one. We're not going to try to bulk all of your stuff together, because I know it's going to be different with each area that you look after.
Yeah, well, a lot of areas won't want to physically remove all of their deleted stops because they may come back. There are some stops that will be deleted. You know, even now with status of deleted or active, we get operators tracking to a deleted stop. Yeah, and that gets flagged up in by the data coordinator. So you know, like Nicholas says, one of my data coordinators will tell him that stop has been flagged as deleted, and then we have to have a discussion whether it should be deleted or it should be made active again. You know, that's one of my weekly audit processes that we go through.
And this is part of just trying to give you the tools so that when a stop is physically gone, it's gone, it's never coming back for whatever reason, the road no longer exists, gone. You can do that in a way that just is in your control. and isn't dependent on time and things like that, because there are so many exceptions, and we want to make it so that it's there isn't waiting periods and things. It's when you're ready to do this, it can be done, and there's the right amount of friction on the process. Does this make a bit more sense? And I'm going to move us along just ever so slightly just to get us through this. So magic has happened. I've clicked on confirm removal, and then I get a nice screen that tells me I've done this, I've done the thing. It tells me I need to go and do something. It confirms to me the stop that I've removed and lets me go and remove another should I want. Does this all seem relatively clear for the happy path? Di?
Yep.
I think you might want to know which published routes it was in so you could track down the actual operator.
That's what we're going to come on to, and you're jumping a step ahead because
sorry.
That's okay. I should have squished it to here, but I centered the page. So we've gone to stop successfully marked as remove, and I am going to run on to the next one. And you have answered one of my questions already, which I thought was a good one too. So this is where I've put a stop in to be removed, and the answers come back saying you can't because somebody's using it. And one of the things that I think it is not just the MV, is the sensible thing to do with this is not just flag up, hey, somebody's using this stop. It's like it's being used in this route by this bus operator, or these routes by these bus operators, assuming that there's a bit of madness going on and people are trying to use a remove stop multiple times or something like that. Does that kind of make sense of that scenario? So if the stop is in a live journey, you need to know the bus operator and the route that's using it, or is it just the bus operator?
No, the route name as well.
Yeah, I'd say both. All information is useful.
I would challenge you on some of that, but then again, I've been playing with the NaPTAN set for way too long now. Not all information is useful. Clear down codes are not. But yes, Di, Andy, it's operator and routes. Okay, the next one is the stop does not exist in NaPTAN. So we have tried. You've put in an ATCO code, maybe you've typoed something, you've put in a 0 when it should have been an O, or something's happened, and you've come up with something, and it just basically says, the stop does not exist. Does this kind of make sense? It's more catching the typos than anything else, I believe.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Too
many zeros or whatever, so yeah.
Yeah. Copy paste has gone wrong. So the next one is we've removed the stop. So Di, I'm going to use you, or Andy actually, I'll use you as an example. Andy's put a stop in. It's gone through past all the checks, and it's gone to the green screen of the stop's been removed. Andy's then gone to remove the stop from his data set, and he's had a quick phone call and something's happened. The dog's barked, and he's completely forgotten to republish his NaPTAN data. So he's then come in to try to remove the stop again, and it comes up with, you need to republish your NaPTAN data. The stop has been removed. It is on the remove list. It's not in any published routes, but you need to push your NaPTAN data back up and refresh it without the stop. Does that make sense as a scenario and as a page to people?
Will that have to be done after each single stop's been removed, or can you do it if you've got 5 to remove, for example, or can you then do all 5 and republish then, or will you have to do each individual one?
You can do all 5 and republish then. It's just if you were doing 5 and you accidentally typoed and repeated 1 as number 4, for example, it would pop up with this of saying, hey, we've removed it, you need to republish your data. Yeah. So yes, okay. You can. We're not expecting you to press publish 5 times We're not that pedantic.
Yeah, good.
Di.
Yeah.
Excellent. This is starting to make some sense. Okay, this is where it gets even more crazy. So you've put in a stop that's, for example, and Nicholas, I'm going to use you as an example. I know you wouldn't do this. Nicholas has created some random ATCO code and has published it in a route. And for some reason, Andy's gone, oh, I need to remove the stop. And he's gone to remove it. It's not a NaPTAN stop, so it's not sitting in NaPTAN. And Nicholas is publishing that he's using it in a live route. So, yes, I know, total crazy. So, it can't be removed because it's not part of NaPTAN. But also, would you need to know who's using it so you can go and ask them what their thoughts are? Or would you just go,
Yeah, again, you would need
Nicholas be doing
operator
something crazy? Yeah. I'll just grab this. Nicholas, does that sound sensible to you as an operator?
Yes, because we kind of have actually done that in the past, namely where we've needed to print out a bus stop display and we've not got the code because maybe the coordinator's on holiday or something. And because we've had to turn it around, we've actually put in a temporary holding code until the coordinator's back, and then we can retrack it and do it properly. So it has happened, and we've forgotten about it. Yeah, not as much as it's not happened for quite some time, but it has happened in the past.
Yeah, excellent. I'm glad, because a lot of people said to me, this scenario would be crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm sure this scenario does actually happen. So I'm glad you've confirmed that, because we had to run through all of the options. So here's another one. I probably just need to paste the same thing. There's a remove stop. So Andy has removed the stop and republished his data, but somehow via some magic, Nicholas has managed to publish a journey with the stop number in it. So this is what you would get. Again, I think Di and Andy are going to say you need to see the operator and the routes. But this is that example where we would flag that a remove stop is used in a live journey, and we would also then try to get BODS and TNDS and Diva and whoever else is doing that scheduling part to take the feed of the remove stops as well as the full NaPTAN feed, so they can basically blacklist stops and say, hey, if you're trying to use this, you are doing something very, very wrong. Excellent. And this one is, now there are 8 different there are 3 bits, which gives us 8 different variables. There are 3 things that could be in a binary. So this one is probably one of the least likely, but we'll go there. Andy has removed a stop, but not yet republished his NaPTAN data. In the meantime, Nicholas has managed to publish a live journey with a stop in. Andy has then gone to remove the stop because he's forgotten that he hasn't republished his NaPTAN data or it's gotten out of sync, and he sees the screen. Or what else do you need on the screen? Andy and Di, I think you're going to tell me.
Operator and route name.
Yeah. Perfect. But you can see the kind of mistake or the error message that's coming up, and these are more warning messages and telling you, okay, here's the outcome of our checks. And then here's the last one, which is the happy error path, and the fact that I basically said that is mad. Andy has removed a stop. It's all gone through completely. He's republished. Somehow Andy or somebody on his team has picked up a list that's got the stop on it again. They go put it in and they end up with this page. Is this a happy path or an error path? Or is it a reassuring path? Is it where Andy has removed some stops and just wants to make sure that everything's gone completely good, and has just gone and rerun one of those stops through the system to make sure that everything went well. Would you do that, Andy?
Yeah. So that's like a happy path.
Yeah.
Probably not, but I might. If I'm going through a list and I get called away for a phone call, I may have missed one as I go through the list. So yes, it's something I could do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally understand, and was also thinking about that because I know what our jobs are like, and I know, especially even when you're doing 4 or 5 things, sometimes you can get called away and forget whether you've done 4 or 5. So you'll double check where you're at. Fantastic. So thank you everybody again for all of your thoughts, your engagement, your energy, your enthusiasm, your time, because I know these are long meetings, but hopefully it's been really interesting. I'd like you to run through and do the feedback corner. The other thing is we are without product owner for a little bit. Haraj has sadly moved on from DFT, or is moving on from DFT. His last day is today. And Hannah is also moving on from DFT, working with DFT, and her last day is the 31st. So after today, or after the 31st, I'm going to be filling in as both the product owner and the service owner for a little bit. I'm also running the mailbox. So just be a bit patient if things are taking a tiny little bit longer from my side than you think would be sensible, because I'm running 3 hats and doing my best. We are getting some people in from DFT to cover the mailbox and become a product owner. We are just waiting on the recruiting of that. So I just wanted to let you all know.
Dr. J, I've got one on this before we do this, end with this removal. As Di mentioned earlier, you're going to have to be very careful with who you give access to remove a stop. They have to be able to remove it from their local software as well. You know,
Absolutely.
I've got 20 odd stop owners in my area, one of which, Oxford, looks after his own data, so he would have to be able to delete his own one, but all the other people would have to come through me because they cannot exit. Actually, even Oxford, Chris cannot delete the stop from the data. Only I can.
Absolutely.
So even the Oxfordshire data.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good to know, because Oxfordshire are one of our top of the list people. So I will make sure that when we get to him, we come and work with you as well. And we figure out, and it may very well be that you're part of that first rollout for Oxfordshire, and then because you're number 4 on my list, Andy. I know you're not the top because you're quite complicated. You've got all the complications, and we want to get a couple of simple ones knocked out of the way before we hit somebody as complicated as you. So I would plan in your mind that we might be doing Oxfordshire sometime this year, probably. And I can't say when, but sometime this calendar year, and we would be doing you just after the financial year. But I could be wobbled by at least 2 months either side of those kind of vague dates.
Yeah.
If that helps you plan. And we recognize that people have to have the permissions and access to their systems to be able to remove a stop, and that's part of this very, very slow rollout, because we've got a handhold. Midlothian will probably never be able to remove a stop, because Midlothian are never uploading stops because they're not talking to us. They will eventually, because we're going to have to get hold of them to figure out whether or not they're on board with us. So yeah, that's it. Di, I see you've come off mute.
Oh, no, I think that's a legacy off mute.
I love that. And rather than a legacy hand, a legacy off mute. So yeah, drop us some feedback there if you've got any feedback. I'm running this again on Thursday. I will flex it a little bit based on what we've got from today, but I might depending on the audience, I might be asking the same questions. So don't feel you have to come to both of them. And we'll be running through the same user research piece as well. So it's exactly the same mural, exactly the same plan, just with a slightly different audience. So don't feel you need to come twice. But thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate your feedback and your input. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a great session. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going
See
to
you
stop
next
recording.
time.
See you next time, Nicholas.
Bye.
Bye. I'm going to stop recording.
Bye.
Stop.